there was something included in this earnings that I found particularly profound. And if you look at the headlines, as we've referenced before here, I mean, you look at it and you go, oh, look, Disney Parks revenue tops $9 billion for Q3 2025. That's by Blog Mickey, August 6, 2025. And you can see right there, an 8% bump over last year. Look at that, $2.5 billion, 13% over last year. Look at that, 22% increase in operating income last year, at least when you compare it to that metric right there, which I found kind of odd. I was like, what are they doing? Why are they comparing it to the prior quarter? We see this every once in a while in which they don't compare these increases to the prior quarter. They compare it to the year, which, as we've noted here, at least multiple times on here in That Park Place, we see that, well, there have been significant increases in terms of revenue making opportunities, that being like Disney Cruise Line bookings, for example, DVC prices, new DVC lodgings and so forth, increases in food, merchandise, all of that. So that might explain that over the course of a year, maybe that's why you get $9 billion for this specific quarter right here and why it's a year over year increase. But I really wanted to compare to the prior quarter. So this is the current quarter that they just talked about here on this prior earnings call, this being Q3 fiscal year 2025. And you can see those numbers reflected there. But if we look to the prior quarter, okay, so that's Q2 fiscal year 2025, we see that the Parks Experiences segment and domestic specifically, well, that's what, $6.4 billion. That's quite significant, Jonas. That's really, really interesting. But when you compare it to this quarter, well, Jonas, that's $6.4 billion. That's a decrease right there, if you noticed, because if you round it up, it's what, $6.5 billion. Now it's $6.4 billion. That's interesting. I guess that's why they didn't actually compare it to quarter over quarter, and they instead went with the year over year metric there. In fact,
which I just want to point out that when they're reporting on streaming figures, they switch back and forth between quarter over year. So this is something that they feel is at their own discretion. They can go with whichever one is the most favorable. Ooh, that's bad.
Indeed. That is bad, right? So quarter over quarter, it was a percentage decrease of about 1.4% right there. Now, international, if you look quarter over quarter, actually had a tremendous increase. And I think it was, plus 17%, which is good. And consumer products as well with a plus, I think it was 4.5% right there. So quarter over quarter, there is a slight revenue increase right there. But I want to focus on these domestic parks specifically. We have been noting here on That Park Place and in other places that the domestic parks themselves have simply fallen off in terms of attendance, and I would say in revenue. And when you compare quarter over quarter, that is reflected. Now, is that consistent across the industry? Very interesting, Jonas. If we actually take a look at Comcast, for example, and their recent quarter, we have noted here that, yes, you have an 18% increase year over year. And yes, that's reflected because of the opening of Epic Universe, as we've noted here before. But if you actually compare it to their last quarter, Jonas, the increase in parks when it comes to our revenue was an increase of 25%. So in the same time that Comcast, and I understand this is, there's a little bit of a difference here in terms of the amount of parks that one company has to another, and how much revenue overall that one park versus multiple parks can actually account for. I understand all that is true, but in the same time period between quarters, okay, when compared to Comcast had a plus 25% revenue increase, whereas the domestic parks for the Walt Disney Company had a decrease of 1.4%. Same quarters, same timelines.
Yeah, that is Vash. That's we missed it because we were covering so many different things that Disney was trying to hide the ball on. If they put this much work into making movies as they do and being this creative on their financial statements, man, can you even imagine the hits that they would be able to push out there?
I love to imagine them, Jonas, but it's just, to me, and that's why I was like, wow, year over year, that's pretty big. But we focusing on the parks to the extent that we do, Jonas. I just couldn't reconcile with it. So I was like, oh, wait a minute. They're not comparing year over year. They're not comparing quarter to quarter. They're comparing year over year. And we have seen that decline that has taken place. And I do believe this effect will be more profound and pronounced in the next quarter, for sure, especially as Epic Universe is more taken into account. Now, there are ways for them to offset that. As much as possible. Obviously, we've noted here the emphasis on DVC, the emphasis on cruise lines, even though the Orlando area did to increase in attendance. They were at Walt Disney World. They were going to cruises. They were going to Epic Universe. So we'll have to wait and see what those numbers actually bear out there. But even when you look at the year over year increases, as the company actually cites right there, we did see a dramatic fall off in international. So
right,
this
and this is a decrease in as you get closer to the summer season. It should be going up.
It should be. It really should be. And you would think that international would be this really growth sector year over year, because they've invested so much of the capital that is allocated to the parks division towards international. Right? We've seen huge investments when it comes to the international parks division. Well, that just hasn't been reflected in terms of in terms of the revenue as reflected in this quarter. And I think this is why Hugh Johnston was asked about China. Remember, he commented on China a little bit, and he was like, well, doesn't look, I forget what the actual quote was, but it didn't look super healthy. And honestly, yeah, I can definitely see why. Not only are they, the Chinese populace that is, not attending your theatrical releases, but they really haven't been attending your parks either, to the degree that maybe they planned on years prior when they opened Shanghai, maybe even Hong Kong.
Yeah. This is also this is, when it comes down to it, this is a company that is built for one thing only, and that is pleasing shareholders. They seem to have given up on pleasing the consumer, and the consumer is the second customer after Wall Street at this point. Bad news, Badger. We've kept you waiting for too long on this here, buddy. For 50 Danish kroner, sorry, they killed the golden goose instead of keep selling the gold eggs. Absolutely. They're also kind of trapped on that idea of a fifth gate here. They know, and this will kind of go back to the Eisner conversation, when they went from Epcot and Magic Kingdom to adding in Disney MGM Studios, the only proper name for that park, obviously, you'll hear us call it Hollywood Studios, so we don't lose everyone on the conversation. They were in direct competition with Universal Studios. That was a reaction and taking a competitor seriously. And then Animal Kingdom was a reaction to Busch Gardens Tampa Bay stealing their market share, or in their opinion, stealing their market share. Well, if you're going to go to an animal park, you might as well stay here in Orlando. It was the whole idea with the hotels. Oh, well, you're going to these other hotels. We're going to do vertical integration here. We're going to have more hotels on property. And now they don't have anything to respond to Epic Universe. They really don't. They've got Villains Land coming around the pike, which is in some ways a Disneyfied version of Dark Universe over there at Epic. And I'm a little bit fearful of how this is all going to go. I saw a tweet recently about all the people that are returning to Disney in Imagineering. It's like 3 people, but I can't help but notice, if these are the people that were driven out of Imagineering in the past and that are now returning, why is it all white guys that felt the need to leave the company in the past? Not to get too much into identity politics here, but it's funny that they were driven out in the past.
Well, yeah, it's very funny that they were driven out in the past. And I think it's an acknowledgement that the talent pool within Imagineering is just not up to par, and just not up to the task of creating, these once in a lifetime experiences that people actually go to the parks for. So, that has something to do with that. But I want to go back to the Epic Universe and the fifth gate thing, because I think you said it in Valiant Renegade on that show, and you're exactly right, Jonas, that they were scared from the cannibalization experience with the opening of Animal Kingdom and how that affected the Walt Disney Resort property. And I think that guidance, I think it was really apt, right? Especially for that time period. But we know that we have seen significant gains, not just in the US, but in the world in terms of population. I think they were so scared that they just couldn't at all conceive of adding a fifth gate to Walt Disney World ever. And now Epic Universe has kind of shown that area will support 7 gates, and they themselves, Disney that is, could have had that 7th gate. And wow, what would that quarter have been like if we saw as much of a growth as we did from Comcast? We can only really theorize what that would have meant for Disney right there. But because they were so adamant about never investing into Walt Disney World and instead increasing the revenue from a per guest perspective, they've really put themselves in this kind of position, this vulnerable position, in which you have Comcast really absorbing all this market share in the Orlando area, and Disney will have nothing for the next 3 years.
Yep. And when it comes down to it, I think the big shocker for all of us, and it makes sense when it happened. That Epic Universe is not stealing market share from Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure. Those parks seem to be exactly what they are. They're not. They are adding more properties over there, and the fact that they've spread out Harry Potter across these 3 parks, I think that also helps, because there are things that are amazing at each one of those parks, and there's a reason. Even if you go back again, like if my family goes to Epic Universe, they're going to want to see the other Harry Potter lands again as well. Even though Universal Studios Florida as a park really needs some attention, like that park badly needs some TLC. But at the same time, Diagon Alley is such a hit that they're fine. They're not seeing cannibalization at a third park here. Yes, I'm not acknowledging Volcano Bay as a theme park. That's a water park. I'm not calling that a theme park. So even if they add another theme park down the pike, although it's probably going to be an expansion to Epic Universe before anything else here, I only see that they're not going to be cannibalizing themselves. I think they're going to be taking away from Disney. They just need another Harry Potter over there, of course, in order to make that work. Fascinating.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.